Yeah, okay. Good enough, I suppose. Hey, how's it going? This is Business. I wanted to talk about some updates I made to the budget slash not so budgety Chieftain and how you can upgrade it. A lot of people ask, like, I have a Mageblood now. What do I do with it? I want to wear Agreeds. How do I do that? I have problems with single targets. How do I solve that? And so, like, we've come up with some of the solutions. Like, me in the community, people have come by, dropped questions, just like general comments. And a few things I want to talk about are, first and foremost, the problems with single target. So the way that the build works is that you penance mark a monster, it summons phantasms, you kill the phantasms explode based off of Hinakora, Death's Fury, and then that puts an ignite on the target, and that's how you kill it. The damage is good, the damage is anywhere from like 2 to 4 million DPS depending on how you've set up your dot multi, what weapons you're using, etc, etc. But one of the problems is that the phantasms spawn kind of far away, so there are a few ways you can solve this. The way that I recommend is if you're moving into a cluster setup, which you technically will want to do for chaos resistance, is you can pick up some medium clusters like this that have assert dominance. You gain 25% increased effect if you've killed 5 enemies recently. I pick up 2 of them. One of the nice benefits of being a Warlock, of being a penance mark build, is that you're constantly summoning these phantasms, which you kill. You summon 3 every second. Recently is every 4 seconds, you kill 12 every second. You constantly have this effect in single target, so you get 50% AoE. Alongside these medium clusters, a couple things you can do is you can have 1 expansive might if you're still using a staff to generate even more area effect, although it's kind of unnecessary. Or you can use towering threats, which give you 8% life and 10% AoE, which is a nice second notable to have alongside assert dominance. If you are not using clusters, if you don't have the setup for it, if you don't have the money for it, or whatever have you, if you're like a low level still, if you're using a staff, you can take these 2 staff AoE nodes here, 12% each, and then down here in the Templar section, you can take area of effect with amplify, and you can even take the 3rd node here to get 50% AoE, which is very similar to what assert dominance is functioning. So that's the first thing for single target that I would recommend, is getting AoE and the ways I would get AoE. Some other things that I have changed or recommended is, so people, originally the budget build had like a 4 link and then you move up to a 6 link and people ask, you know, should I use Deadly Ailment, should I use Cruelty, should I use Burning Damage, do I use, you know, Fire Pen, whatever have you, do I use Chain DD, do I use regular DD? And we're gonna like simplify that as much as possible now, so there's like a very streamlined idea of what the Detonate Dead is for the build. Once again, I'll mention it, like, the build's damage is Hinakora. Hinakora explosions is the build's damage. The way you're functioning this is through penance mark on single target and killing white and magic monsters in mapping situations, or creating penance marks in mapping situations as well. The reason I bring this up is because I really want to stress how little your detonate damage matters. It is such an insignificant amount of the damage to the build. The only thing you need to be able to do is kill 50,000 HP phantasms, which is pretty easy to do, or kill white monsters or blue monsters, which, if you've ever like played any regular old build, like, they're not a non-issue, right? So with this in mind, I use Cast 1 Stun, which is like the core concept of the build, right? Cast 1 Stun support, Detonate Dead of Chain Reaction. The ignite damage from Chain Reaction is lower than regular Detonate Dead, but it functions much better for consistently having ignites, especially as you're like clearing large abyss packs or just large packs of monsters in general. It rolls through all the monsters on the ground, gives you ignites, and it makes sure that you're consistently proccing the penance mark phantasms on a 1-second cooldown for single target. Alongside this, I use a Flame Surge. Flame Surge makes it so that it creates a burning ground based on the ignite that the monster has. It's a great way to supplement your Hinakora damage, which once again is the main point of the build, where if you were to use like another damage support for the Detonate Dead, you won't get anywhere near the returns of having a Flame Surge. And this is just where I opt to put it. If you want to move the Flame Surge out of the 6 link, you can, but my opinion is it's just like a nice place to put it. And there's another reason coming up as to why I have the Flame Surge specifically here. So Deadly Ailments is my choice of a support. You can have it leveled up, you know, all these things, whatever your attribute requirements are, you can have them leveled up if you want. But the reason I'm using Deadly Ailments is there are better damage supports than Deadly Ailments. However, Deadly Ailments makes it so that you won't die to Elemental Reflection. I highly recommend using it. Alongside this, I recommend having a low-level Frostblink or Flame Dash or Lightning Orb or whatever you want to use for mobility, and a low-level Frost Bomb or your Enfeeble Cast 1 Stun Desecrate setup so that you don't die to Reflect from these as well. The last two links that I'm going to recommend is Culling Strike. Culling Strike is a great way to supplement, once again, the Hinocore damage, because this is a way to give damage to an ability that isn't linked to it, right? As well as by having Culling Strike support linked here, you can use item rarity support. Because your Flame Surge is hitting and your Detonate Dead is hitting, it's a great way to sneak a little bit more Magic Find in it. I know that rarity isn't like the most important stat in the league, but there isn't a need for you to have another damage link in here anyway, so you might as well. So that's going to be the 6th link that I recommend. It's probably going to be the 6th link I recommend forever. If you want to move the Flame Surge out, then sure, I don't know, add some other damage support in here. But it's unnecessary in my opinion. A couple other changes I have made is we have an open suffix on our gauntlets, which we're using for 40% reduced shock, alongside Soul of Garakan, which gives us 60% reduced effective shock. This is a great way to solve shock, which can be a problem when you're in like the budgety setup of the build, or if you're just like not yet ready to transition to a period of elements if you want with a Watcher's Eye, or if you don't want to transition to Storm Shroud. You don't want to set up a Legion Jewel or wear Mageblood or whatever have you. Like, this is a great way to solve shock, which is going to be one of the more important things to solve. Is I use a glove, suffix, and Minor Pantheon. It's great. Beyond that, I have moved to an Eyes of the Great Wolf. If you still want to use a Defiance of Destiny, if you still want the safety of it for leveling up, be my guest. But if you have a high rolled Blood Notch, or if you have a 50% plus Blood Notch with Unfaltering or more, then in my opinion, you are more than safe to just run without a Defiance. And I'm using an Eyes of the Great Wolf. There's several things with this Eyes of the Great Wolf that is different from previous builds that I would like to mention here. Is first and foremost using an Eyes of the Great Wolf for quantity. Magic Find League, get more Magic Find. Simple enough. The second modifier on this is important. I have 100% cold damage from hits taken as fire damage. You can have 100% cold damage from hits taken as fire damage, or you can have 100% cold damage from hits taken as lightning damage. Important point here is that you are removing cold damage from hits from hitting you. You no longer take cold damage from hits. This is to help with a mechanic in the game where if a cold critical hit strikes you, then it can't stun you. It doesn't care if you can freeze, be frozen. It doesn't care if the mob can freeze. It doesn't care about any of that stuff. It is like very specifically, and I'll have like a little link down below of a wonderful write-up about it. But the TLDR is you need to not take cold damage. This has other impacts on the build that we'll talk about later. I have changed the Anoint from Vampirism to Whispers of Doom. I still use a Jewel for a little bit of recoup on top of the Helm Implicit recoup, just because having an excess amount of 30% to offset the Petrified Blood is nice in case you get hit by less recovery mechanics, such as an Arc Nemesis Regenerator mob or Wasting Touch from Delirium. Having a little bit of excess can be helpful. But I've replaced it with Whispers of Doom, because one of the things that people bring up a lot is like, they don't want to spam Penance Mark, which is perfectly fine. I can understand this. So by having Whispers of Doom, you can have Penance Mark and still have your Cast 1 Stun Enfeeble, not override your Penance Mark. You just Penance Mark the mob once, it'll stay on forever, you're good to go. So that's the big change to the necklace that I would have. If you still want to use a Defiance, once again, be my guest. I would recommend switching to the Whispers of Doom for the quality of life. It's not necessary, but it is a pretty significant quality of life increase. Outside of that, everything else is pretty stock from the previous builds. We talk about the AoE, we talk about the Great Wolf, we talk about the 6-link setup that I would like to use. As you can see, we're no longer using a Legion Jewel, we solve shock in a different way. Yeah. Also, I've changed the reservation around. I'll have the POBs all down below. I've changed the reservation so you don't need the life reservation down here. I guess I can turn all my Rs on everything. Where you don't need this reservation node, you don't need this reservation mastery. If you want, you can allocate another 10% aura effect here for a max res. It's not really necessary, but if you have the free point, go for it. But this fits in alongside having the you count as low life while 55% max life. It's highly recommended, gives you a bunch of extra life. Now then, as far as choices of weapons, you notice I'm not wearing a weapon. So, Originally, the build uses a Grey Spire. You don't need as much damage. If you do wear a Grey Spire, I'd recommend having 4 to max res. It gives you Chaos res, it gives you all the LE res, it has a good amount of damage, it's a cheap item, etc, etc. Highly recommend it. I wouldn't get this much global damage, it's not necessary, it's just increased damage like anything else. If you want alternatives, there's a few things you can do. You can use a Cane of Kulamok, where the important stats on this are fire damage over time multi, and fire damage with ignite chance. The big thing about this is that you get a bunch of ignite chance, so you can reconfigure your tree to not need as much ignite chance, which will let you allocate points into more dot multi. Alternatively, what you can do is you can make some scepters. You can make wands, you can make scepters, but scepters have the best implicit, because they give you elemental damage, it helps all your damage. The thing I would recommend looking for is Fractured Fire Damage Over Time Multiplier. You want a high amount, you want over 30%, closer to 38 is best, but they get more and more expensive as you go up, as is natural. The reason I recommend these is it was brought to my attention when we were first tweaking the build, testing the build, and people would come up with suggestions. It was not my idea originally, is that if you start with Fractured Fire Dot over time, then you can effectively just chaos spam into damage over time multiplier a lot easier than going the other way around. If you start with fractured damage over time multiplier and you were try to chaos spam or fire roll or anything of this nature, it's like hundreds if not thousands of chaos to do. If you start with fire damage over time multiplier fractured and you just chaos spam, it's about 100 chaos to see tier 2 dot multi, about 200 chaos to see tier 1 dot multi. That is not a high cost, especially this league, right? You're finding T1 dot multi for less than the divine, typically. And the thing that you're hoping to hit with this is an open prefix. That way you can craft the veiled fire damage and chance to ignite. And that's all you care about the item. This thing has cast speed, this thing has mana, these are cool stats for other builds, but you don't care about any of this stuff. If you really want to push it, you can go for +1 all or +1 fire alongside it to help with your purity of fire, so that you can do a +1 gem implicit for a better enlighten, but it's not necessary. The only stats that matter realistically are fire damage over time multi, damage over time multi, and then crafted prefix. These are my recommendations for the weapons. You're either going to use Grey Spire, Kulamok, 1 or 2 of these scepters. If you want 2 of these scepters as the current market, I'm sure it'll shift. Things prices go crazy all the time, but as it currently stands, 2 scepters are cheaper than the Kulamok and they're better. So I would look into that. One of the benefits of using a scepter is it's a one-hander. It's nice, right? So there's a couple things you can do with that. You can wear a Centauri's Answer, which gives you quant, and then you can get a Fizz taken as hits LE implicit for a little more defense. Or you can wear a Dawnbreaker for a real high amount of defense added to your build. One of the reasons I would recommend a Dawnbreaker, although you can go a Centauri as well, depending on what you're doing. One of the reasons I would recommend a Dawnbreaker is if you're trying to transition into a Greed's Embrace. You don't need one with these implicits, although obviously they would be good. Max res is good, reduced crit is okay, even though you're mostly crit immune most of the time. Increased damage is okay, etc, etc. But if you're going to transition into a Greed's off of a Cloak of Flame, you need to make up the Fizz mitigation loss. So this has 40% physical damage taken as hits, or 40% of physical damage taken as fire damage in general. You need to make that up somewhere. You can make it up with double or triple Watcher's Eyes. Triples are very expensive. You can see this one even uses Purity of Fire, Purity of Lightning. It's not that hard to fin another aura or just switch off the Malevolence, honestly. You don't need the damage. You can get Karui Jewels, the Timeless Lethal Prides, for a bunch of Fizz taken as fire. You can fit one in over by Templar, over by Witch, even down here. You can wear a Progenesis. This is, while it's not the most reliable thing in the world because things like Droughtbringer exist, things like Reduced Flask Effect from Delirium exist, you're not always, sometimes you're just tanking Abysses, waiting for them to burn down slowly, even with a 20-second duration from 2 charges. Sometimes it doesn't last, but it's another option if you want it. If you wear a Progenesis, I would recommend having more sources of regeneration or recoup. Ideally, recoup. Now then, another question that gets brought up a lot is, should I use Rational Doctrine anymore? I don't recommend it. It was an okay solution for part of your curse. So you needed to answer curses, right? And Rational Doctrine gave you a bunch of recovery, it gave you a bunch of curse reduction. You can use it with a Storm Shroud for reduced curse effect or something, or some other jewel with a reduced curse effect. They've skyrocketed like crazy. I don't recommend using this anymore. It's not that good, honestly speaking. there are like way better ways to solve curses. When you're playing the budget version, just get like a 2-charge or 3-charge of this instead. Whereas Sulfur with reduced effective curse on you effectively gives you curse immunity. It's not technically so, like if you click the altar in the woods, you get curses, but for the most part, it's curse immunity. And then, yeah, like, I don't know, man. Just use the Sulfur instead of Rational Doctrine. It's crazy how expensive these got. That being said, if you want to do ailment immunity setups, you know, you can still do the Elegant Hubris setup with Storm Shroud for avoidance. I don't really recommend it. I think it's much better to fit in a Karui Jewel for Fizz taken as Ellie, even if you're not going for greeds. But if you want it, it's still there. As far as Mageblood is concerned, because a lot of people have been playing this build and they're like, hey, I found, you know, a mirror, I found a bunch of divines, I found a Mageblood itself, whatever have you, right? They're like, I have a Mageblood, how do I fit in my build? This is the recommendations I would have for a Mageblood. So Mageblood gives you the ability to wear, you know, juiced up utility flasks. First things we're going to do is we're going to equip a Mageblood. I'm going to drop this CV flask. Do some of this swapping around here. We're still going to use the Divination to still it. I'm going to use a gold flask with rarity. If you really want, you don't have to use this, but I would recommend it. It's pretty powerful. Vendors are expensive. You know, finding T0s is fun. It's not like the best returns ever, but you don't really need another flask, so do it. You're going to wear a Quicksilver of movement speed. This is the main reason to use a Mageblood, because this build is slow when you're walking around. Alongside that, you're going to use a Silver Flask because, like, once again, you want to be fast. We're using the Silver Flask here as our answer to Curse. You need 52% reduced effective Curse to get over 100% reduced effective Curse, including the Enkindling, the prefix. And we're going to be using an Amethyst here for 52% chance to avoid Shock. Once again, you need 52% or higher to have over 100% avoidance, including the Enkindling. Alongside this, we'll change our passive tree a little. As you can see, we no longer have enough int for our build, but that's fine. We're going to drop our Chaos Cluster here. As I said, we're using an Amethyst Flask now. We're going to slot in a Storm Shroud. It can have whatever on it. You can have like a CV Storm Shroud, I guess is like the best thing in the world, but we're going to click an int node here, or you can just have int in a different setup. You don't need the attributes, put it into life somewhere. And then we're just going to click these 2 nodes for 6% life. With access to this anti-crit node, if you ever end up in a high blue wisp map and you want to make sure that you can survive the initial hit to then get crit immunity off of this. That would be the big swap I do. Yeah, I think that's it. Great. But yeah, to recap, this is my 6th link. I'll have like a POB for it. Get a Great Wolf. They're incredible. Really important to be able to not take cold damage. Alongside this, I'll mention real quick, is damage can only shift once. So if you have a source of physical damage taken as cold damage, that cannot then shift from cold damage to fire or lightning. This is why I have moved away from Taste to Hate. It's not necessary for the build, and this will give you much higher consistency with your stun build functioning properly at all times. Make sure you don't get it on your helmet. Make sure you don't get it on your Watcher's Eye. You can get the other Fizz taken as LAs, just make sure you don't take Fizz taken as cold. Another minor thing to mention, it's not that relevant, but it can be, is, so you can see Eyes of the Great Wolf has 100% cold damage taken from hits taken as fire damage, right? If you wear a Dawnbreaker, it also says, you know, this is cold damage taken from hits taken as fire damage. This also says cold damage taken as fire damage. So now you have 118% cold damage taken as fire damage. It does increase the damage. That being said, elemental damage typically for Chieftain builds is a non-issue, but just something to be aware of when you're shopping for a Dawnbreaker if you want to transition to a Dawnbreaker for greeds later, is you would like that lightning damage taken as fire or that cold damage taken as fire to be as low as possible in conjunction with your Great Wolf. But yeah, I think that's everything that I really want to talk about. At the end of the day, realistically speaking, like, your weapon choice doesn't matter that much. Your armor choice doesn't matter that much. The AoE is like a big thing to get. Make sure your flasks are proper, stuff like that. Yep, if you have any questions, I don't know, leave a comment. Drop by the Twitch, do whatever. But I hope this helps some of y'all smooth out the transitions for your builds.